Okay, so today we are going to talk about observing and building desired habits around food. Last week, we talked about kind of understanding our baseline needs around food, and I'm going to remind us of that today, so no worries if you weren't here for that. But essentially now we can start to think about how are we going to understand what we need and then put pieces into place to help ourselves with those items. So that's kind of the point of today. I'm going to go through a couple of steps to this process, and then I'm going to give each of us a couple minutes to think about what comes up for you, right? So what are the things that are sticking out that you might want to work on? Or can we brainstorm about how to get progressively closer towards the ideal formation of this habit? And I imagine that will become clearer as we go through this, but just kind of keep that in mind, all right? So welcome everybody. This week we are talking about our next chakra, which is around the solar plexus, and this is focused on change and transformation. So part of our conversation today is going to be around what are we trying to transform our habits into over time. Partially around being a student and practicing observation. So again, part of this is going to be observing where we are at currently and where we might want to make changes. And then where, if at all, do you desire discipline in your life? And certainly this can apply to our food in a sense, and even thinking back a couple weeks to our previous conversations that we've had, I think it was 2 weeks ago that we talked about treat management, or maybe it was last week, but regardless, establishing appropriate borders within our food plans is sometimes appropriate. So keeping all of this in mind, this is kind of the overarching theme of this conversation. So step one of this whole process, is to observe. And today I'm going to invite you to observe where in your life are there already food, nutrition, or body composition related habits or processes in place, right? You don't necessarily have to write anything down unless you want to, but let me give you a second just to think about it. Where in your life do you have things already in place, habits, processes, things you do around food, body composition, nutrition, those kinds of things? Along these lines, what routines do you do daily, weekly, or monthly that contribute to your overall health? These could be things like food shopping on a weekly basis. It could be meal prepping. It could be starting the day with a glass of water. It could be reminding yourself about mantras at critical times. It could be aiming to sleep 8 hours per night, whatever it is. But let me give you a second now. Think about it. Where do you already have things in place? If you want to jot down some notes, feel free. And here's the thing. Noticing the pieces that you are already doing and giving yourself a second to congratulate yourself is huge, right? So every morning I get up and have, our morning margarita, which is water, a little bit of lemon juice, and some salt. And for me, that helps get me on the path of hydration for my day, right? So it's exciting to know that I have that in place for myself. And that's just an example personally. But not only is that an awesome thing to recognize myself for, like, hey, Sarah, you've gotten up every day for probably 2.5 years now and had a glass of water, like, awesome. And not only is that awesome, but it also shows me that I have the power to put habits in place where I want and need them. Okay, so this is part of the observation piece. Okay, so step one, observing what we already have. Let's move on. Step two, noticing areas for improvement. All right, so stay with me here, and then I'm going to give you a second to think through this. Where do you stand in connection to baseline recommended needs around food and nutrition? And this is some of the stuff that we talked about last week. Reminders of pieces to consider, right? Eating mostly unprocessed foods. So where do you stand on that spectrum? Where do you stand with drinking mostly water? And in that case, working up to about half of our body weight in ounces of water per day, and that's from pounds body weight. So keeping that in mind. Aiming to have at least 3 to 5 servings of fruits or vegetables per day, and 1 serving is about a fist-sized portion. Eating 3 to 5 servings of protein per day, and 1 size is about the size of our palm, 4 to 6 ounces. Considering setting a reasonable amount of treats per day, okay? So take a second now and think about or write down areas in your life that you care about that you would potentially like to make improvements on, okay? And the you care about piece is important here, because just because I told you to eat 3 to 5 servings of protein doesn't necessarily mean that that's something that's important to you right this minute, okay? So think about where are areas in your life that you could make improvements. I'm going to give you about a minute or 2 to think about this. The reason I reminded us of those baseline habits is just things that you might consider including in this conversation, certainly not have-tos, if you will. Okay, go ahead and wrap up the thought that you're on, and know that we're going to come back to more opportunity to work on this, so do not worry. Our next step now is to think about what the ideal habits would look like, right? And I'm going to ask you to think about this. If you could wave a magic wand, what food, nutrition, or body composition habits would you like to put in place? What routines do you want to complete on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis that contribute to your overall health? And I also want to invite you to think about this in the sense that it is 100% okay if it doesn't seem possible to completely do this just yet. This is the wave a magic wand. In an ideal world, what would it look like? All right. So if you think about observing what you're already doing, noticing places that we could potentially make improvements, and then if we could wave a magic wand, what would it look like? Jot down some thoughts. Maybe 30 seconds or so to think if you need it. Okay. I think this is our last step, or we're getting there, right? Building the ideal habit. You might already have notes around this. This is okay. But what does the end result or the ideal execution of this habit look like for you? So for example, one thing could be I plan my meals for the whole week and shop accordingly every Thursday morning. Right? This is an example of an ideal habit that you might want to create. It's also totally okay and potentially natural that you're not there yet, right? Or it doesn't feel feasible to be there yet. So what progressive steps can we put in place to allow you to reach that ideal execution over time, right? Sometimes we try to go from 0 to 100 too quickly. And especially around food, it can lead to frustration and a lack of success, or you feeling derailed or not able to do it, right? So taking progressive steps is typically more successful, right? So using that same example, I plan my meals for the whole week and shop accordingly every Thursday. An example here could be starting with just planning breakfast for a week and shopping for it. Then the next week, I can plan breakfast and snacks and have those items. And from there, week by week, progress until I cover all my meals and snacks and get my shopping done as well. Okay, so this is just an example. And I want you to think about things that might make sense for you. Yeah, you like that? Awesome. Feel free to borrow. But the whole idea here is progressive, right? Because if you're someone who doesn't necessarily shop or cook at home right now, thinking about going from 0 meals at home to 21 meals and snacks at home is a big jump, right? So taking a more progressive approach can be huge here. All right. Okay, wait a second before I move on. Let me give you a couple minutes and see if you can think about some of the observations that you just made, some of the potential areas of improvement. And I want you to start with thinking about what does the end result, again, the waving a magic wand, what does it look like? And then we can progress down from there. So if you have ideas of how to progress, awesome, write those down. If not, we're going to open the floor in a couple minutes and we're all going to chat and have some idea sharing and see if I can give you some suggestions as well. But let me give you a couple minutes to think about this. All right, pause there. One last piece here, and this is a little bit in a different vein. So you might have to kind of pause this ideal habit piece for 1 second and just think about one other piece here. And this is learning from past challenges. All right. So I want you to think and observe challenges that you've had in the past around your food and nutrition or body composition, or really these can apply to anything, but in this particular case, we're talking about food related things, and potentially how to prepare differently in the future. So think about where have you run into stopping points or areas where you have felt derailed in the past, something that threw you off. And here's an example that might help jog your thinking on this. For example, I went on vacation and I did not have any food available when I got home. And so I ended up eating not so healthy takeout for a week. And that week of eating low quality foods left me feeling tired, not sleeping well, unenthused to work out, etc. So to prepare for that in the future, that moment of feeling derailed, I prepared some meals in my freezer to have when I returned. And I also scheduled an Instacart grocery delivery for the following day so that I knew I would have healthy options available for that week. This is merely an example, but I imagine that you might be able to see here was my problem where I felt derailed. I am learning from it and I'm setting myself up for future success. Okay. So now take a second and think, what challenges have you run into in the past that we can potentially differently prepare for in the future? And it's okay if you don't have the differently prepare for in the future thing at the tip of your tongue right now. That's what we're going to talk about and brainstorm about next. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I would love to hear from anybody who likes to share, but let's talk about what we can potentially action from thinking about some of these questions. And ideally, we'll be able to potentially create next steps, create progressive plans towards your ideal habit, or even think about past challenges and how we might adjust moving forward. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just chat with y'all. So if you would like to, please feel free to unmute yourself or share anything that came up for you or anything we could potentially strategize around.
Yeah, something that came up for me, especially since being on the road,
Right.
eating out or eating unhealthy because of a lack of planning.
Mm.
And with that, there's another layer of planning where certain towns, certain areas do not have the level of quality of food that I want to be putting into my body. So it requires a lot more planning there. And so what I wrote in step 4 was, plan meals for the week and shop on either Sunday or Monday because I usually have some time in the afternoon on those days. And the result of that is I am secure and safe in understanding where my next meal is and where that food is coming from. So,
That's excellent.
and that,
And what was the last part you said? That was what?
it just really resonates with me. You know, it's the result. It's the why I'm doing this. Why am I putting so much planning in this? Because I I feel better physically, mentally, and emotionally when I put better quality food in my body. And then the safety and security thing as well. Something I noticed when I worked at a gym was if I didn't bring lunch that day, when it hit noon, I was like, I need to eat because I didn't know where the meal was. And if I brought my food, then sometimes I get lost in programming or movement or breathing or whatever it may be. And I got to my food when I got to my food.
Right.
And I enjoyed
because it wasn't a worry.
It wasn't a worry.
Yeah.
I knew where it was.
Yeah.
It was in the fridge. Yeah.
Yeah. And true or false, Grant, for you, when you did get to those days, or maybe even currently, of when you're like, crap, what am I going to eat next? Do your choices usually get better at times like that? Or do your choices usually get worse in terms of quality when you're in that, like, in a pinch type moment?
Yeah, I'll settle.
Yeah,
Settle
exactly.
a lot.
Right.
And it doesn't feel
really,
good.
yeah. And especially when you don't physically feel as great after, you're like, shit, I could have made a different choice, right? And I really like your idea of, you know, potentially setting time aside on Saturday or Sunday, or maybe even in your travels, even if it takes, you know, 10 minutes out of the way to go to the grocery store that you like, you know, it could be worth it in the big picture. And part of that, to your point, is reminding yourself of the priority. It's a priority for you to eat certain things, or, you know, to not necessarily settle for foods all the time. And that's great. That's awesome. Is there anything that came up for you in this section about thinking about feeling derailed at all, or like, you know, just taking that example that I shared, even about a vacation or whatever, and not having food when I got back? Is that something that you experienced in your travels at all?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I mean, yeah, there's been nights where I will either fast or uh, have like beef jerky and a piece of fruit because I know where that stuff's coming from. And those are the nights that I'm like, okay, yeah, I I didn't really plan, but I still feel good and in alignment with
True.
what I'm doing.
Agreed.
However,
Good point.
there's been plenty of times where, especially if I'm staying with somebody else, like right now I'm staying alone, and it really gives me an opportunity to plan. Um, but if I'm staying with like a friend or something, I'll usually default to whatever they're doing, right? And so that for sure, like, oh, I'm really not that well prepared, so I'll just default to whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Is there anything else that you need help strategizing around setting yourself up with?
This is awesome. Yeah,
Cool.
I got a good why and result behind what I do.
Nice. Wonderful. Good. Cool. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else like to share today?
Yes.
Awesome. Hello.
Hello. So at the moment, I taste what's the benefit of the food. Like if it's potato, I feel the texture, and potato like gives me a good feeling. It's interesting when when I eat something that has like sugar in it, or let's say coffee, I get what the effects of coffee, not the like the caffeine, no, like the shakiness in my hand. And so I'm exploring that, which is interesting. At the same time, I observed that I'm like lazy in planning my food, where I got an opportunity with doing that because of my like my passion for cooking and baking and creating recipes and so on. So I noticed this now, that I've have an opportunity with that. I can make like the treats and the yumminess
Mm.
that I want and explore this by prepping lunch, let's say. And I like to be like 70% vegan, because I feel when I'm not like, when I'm consuming protein, I feel I'm bloating. My energy is not when I'm 70% vegan. Also, like I want to do that without getting like shakes, protein shakes, or
Okay.
so that's my challenge.
Cool. And you went in and out there for a second, so just let me make sure that I understand. Is that you're seeing a challenge with planning, also wanting to better understand protein without necessarily having to go to shakes? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Cool. And also enjoying the experience of feeling food in a different way because you're not necessarily tasting it right now.
Yes, exactly.
Very, very cool. Yeah.
Like tomorrow I'm replacing, I'm replacing the like rice with potatoes with a dish I wouldn't, if I have my taste buds, I wouldn't eat. Sarah, you would know this maybe, mlukhiyya. It's a green plant. We eat it with rice. So tomorrow I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do that with boiled potatoes. So it's I'm listening to what I want to eat. At the same time, I'm experimenting an alternative carbs, because our culture is rice and bread, and I love that. I'm not gonna like I love bread. Yeah. I love so yeah, it's that. And past challenges as well is emotionally. I would be consistent, and then like I would have an emotional experience. I would like go back to point, not zero, but like would go back.
No, I get you. Yeah. So, and that's really, and have you thought, or do you want to think about now potential ways to, I don't want to say set yourself up for and assuming that those emotional times are going to happen, but potential resources or options to consider when and if those emotional times do come up?
Yeah.
Do you recall last week, I think it was.
And I noticed that it's I'm getting better at like emotions. I'm getting better.
It's a super tough subject.
Yeah, it's for me. I'm doing my best on
of course.
Heartfully. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I totally get you. Is it take your time? That's okay. Like a super challenging times, because a lot of us use food as a form of comfort. And so if we are experiencing, emotional, physical, otherwise challenges, it's an easy thing to go to, right? And you're not wrong in doing so either, right? Because it can make you literally feel better. And yes, with that being said, yeah.
And what's interesting is now that I'm eating food, and I know it's protective in some areas because I don't taste it. I feel like I have that sensations of feeling full. And today I craved something I love, with just chips and Lay's ketchup with Diet Coke. It's something I've always, it's memories also. It's not just this habit itself. And today I just felt like it. So I got it. When I got it, I ate it. I had an emotional experience. Like, fuck, this is processed. What am I eating? I'm not enjoying it. So all what I had to do is like be with that moment of why I wanted to eat this. I didn't taste it. I didn't fill that hole. And so I was with it. I'm like, fuck. I do use food as I used to, like, even smoking, I used to be a smoker, and I noticed these times that I spent thinking about the next cigarette or when I'm having it.
Mm-hmm.
So together, like that bad habit and food is just the conscious eating of it, because food is what gives me like good energy as well. So it's this experience that like today I took a picture of an outfit that I want to wear, and I told myself I'm gonna nail this because I eat what's good. It's not about this outfit, because I eat what's for me, like Aya. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And I know that these types of conversations can be challenging or emotional. And so I appreciate you sharing. And, you know, what's interesting about what you're currently experiencing in terms of not having a lot of taste is that shift in perspective about what foods do for you. Because like you just said, because you can't taste it right now, that meal that you love or that snack that you love did not have the same effect, right? Which highlights even more the fact that there's more going on, right, with these conversations, that we are trying to potentially fill holes. And if you recall from last week, I think we did it, and I imagine you were here, but if I'm wrong, let me know. But we did that 4-question, the pattern interrupt strategy, and it's number 1, am I actually hungry for something? Then have something healthier first. Number 2, am I actually thirsty? Have some water. Number 3, do I still want that thing? Have it. And then number 4, am I still feeling that need, right? And then if that's the case, then it could be time to look deeper at that. Is it stress? Is it emotion? Is it a conversation that needs to be had? Is it any of those kinds of things? So, you know, although it was difficult from what you're sharing, I do imagine it can allow you to think, like, what else do I need?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Because I noticed my intakes, like, I do eat like this fist thing. I love it. Like, okay, if I wanted to eat something, it's the fist. And
Wonderful.
Also, like, the whole week I'm thinking of, I can create like brownies that wouldn't make me feel guilty. I don't like something that I made that's not processed, that doesn't have sugar, because sugar, I am amazed by how sugar affects me. And it's interesting, like, I don't like, why am I drinking with tea sugar? Honey, like, the alternative of it tastes better. Usually I wouldn't like honey taste. I like the sugar taste in my tea. So this is interesting as well. I'm grateful actually for for this experience.
Yeah, exactly. No, but this is so great though, because you're noticing things. You know, it's maybe a habit that you put sugar in your tea as opposed to honey. And now that you're able to notice, you can say, okay, moving forward, I feel honey is a better choice for me, right? Or this is just an example, but this
exactly
thought process can be applied to so many things. Awesome. So over the next couple weeks, see what planning a couple of meals or snacks, or even things that you enjoy wanting to make, looks like for you. And see if it's possible to plan, a couple breakfasts, or, some snacks or things like that, and see what it looks like, and then build from there, right? It doesn't have to be every meal or snack all at once, but just progress towards that for you.
My week, I feel my weekly treats, planning them. That's when I get these cravings. I know I have this. I got a treat that day. And prepping for lunch. Yeah, lunch. Breakfast is something I like to eat fresh, but with lunch I can do that and educate myself, like with getting protein from lentils, or you know, seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, explore
Yeah.
seeds. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll send you a document I have that's plant-based protein sources. And I imagine that you probably know of them, but if you're looking for more options, maybe it's just things that you haven't thought of or whatever, but could be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next piece on top of that would be to just make a list of lunches that you enjoy that includes some protein sources, so that when it comes to making lunch or prepping for lunch, you have a list to work from.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And also,
right,
like
cool.
some last thing I added is, as you said, you start your day with the margarita. Okay, so you already planned your day, how it will go. You'll be like, you'll hydrate the whole day. It's the first. This is what I'm finding challenging. The first like thing I do in my day. This is my ultimate challenge. So I'm gonna challenge myself for the next 7 days to nail the first, not 2 hours, the first half an hour of my morning. This will get me like, okay, from prepping lunch to خلاص, everything is prepped. I'm conscious eating, like, so yeah, 7 days is
I love it.
But I will do that now.
I love it. And
Yeah.
and you know what, to your point about the whole morning margarita thing, is exactly that. It gets me a win right away, right? I know I'm on the path to getting all my water in because I've done step one, right?
Yes.
And that's why a lot of people have certain morning routines that they really enjoy, because it starts their day on a path that they know is a positive one for them. And so if that makes sense for you, absolutely, let's put that in place and see how that goes. Yeah, wonderful.
We'll do that with the morning margarita.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
But I like adding like half room temperature, half boiling water.
Oh, yeah. I like mine cold, and Jared likes his room temperature, and then I have another friend who likes it warm. So whatever works. Guess you water, right? Good.
Okay. 7 days.
Thank you for sharing,
Let's
Aya.
see.
Yes. Yeah. Next week, maybe.
Thank
if you
you.
can make
Thank
it to
you
this
so
call,
much.
let's chat again. Of course.
Yeah. Thank you for creating this, honestly.
Oh, of course. Thank you. Anything that you'd like to share, Sarah? No pressure, but just opening the floor for you if you want.
So one of the challenges that I've tried before was to reduce my caffeine, because I'm noticing that I like to have the habit of having water before my coffee in the morning, but sometimes it's because I'm in a hurry that I generally will have the coffee before that. So I realized that throughout the day, that even if I'm at work and I'm bored, I don't have anything to do, that I'm drinking coffee out of boredom, not that I actually need the coffee. And I'm also having that thing where sometimes I don't feel like having breakfast in the morning, but I realize I need to get that back because I'm not liking how my whole food is going at the moment. So I was thinking of getting breakfast back. So instead of me just having the coffee, and I'm probably going to be drinking a lot of water and caffeine during work just to avoid being hungry, because I usually keep like snacks in my desk, like chickpea crackers, rice cakes, stuff like that. But they're not really filling or anything. And then sometimes I like to meal plan, and like, so instead of meal prepping, because I feel like sometimes I do the shopping like once a week, but I do like to have like the recipe options, but sometimes I feel like it's the same exact meal, so I get bored from it.
Yeah.
Or it's that I'm on the way home, so I end up picking anything up, and I kind of have a criteria for stuff like I don't want white flour. So I pick up healthy pizza, but the dough is white. So
Mm,
yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. A couple thoughts, if you're open to them, that came to mind when you were just sharing is, as far as the breakfast thing, sometimes thinking of easy to consume breakfasts can help you get back on the path to having more food earlier. And so potentially it could be something like a piece of fruit to start the day. And just to get something in your system tends to kind of jumpstart our bodies and want more foods. So even if it is just something smaller to get you back on the path of having something earlier, that's a great option, right?
Because
And
sometimes
then,
I would have my own granola that I've made, so I just kind of put it in a small container and just bring a small bottle of my plant-based milk and just add it to it once I'm at work.
I think that sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
And I've tried to put like different things, whether it's nuts and seeds, some different parts of it, some healthy fats there, but without the oil, just to make sure that everything's in it, and chia seeds
Mm.
for the omega-3s. Sometimes I would do that, but sometimes because I'm in a hurry, I would end up just picking up a couple of maybe some cut up pineapples from
Mm.
anywhere.
Mm.
But then I realized that when I'm having lunch to be a bit later in the day than I usually expect. And then my dinners are around the same thing. So sometimes like the same food is being repeated on in lunch
Mhm.
and dinner. So sometimes I kind of get bored with the same salad exactly. Yeah.
And you might even consider doing something similar to what I suggested to Aya, is potentially making a list of lunches that you enjoy, or dinners that you enjoy, or breakfast options. And it might seem silly, but sometimes when it's like, oh, I got bored of this meal, what are my other options? And you can kind of check in on that. Or even if it's protein sources you like, fruits you like, veggies you like, and then it's pull one from each and make a meal, something like that. And that can help to jog your thoughts when you're running to get food, after work and stuff like that, even if it's not necessarily like a pre-planned meal. Excuse me. And then I did just write an email to my kind of email crew this week about caffeine intake, and kind of the pieces to be aware of as far as caffeine stuff goes. So I can forward you that information if it would be helpful to you, as just like another element to kind of keep in mind as you're thinking about, your coffees and stuff like that. And I recently learned in a hormone class that having water, then coffee, then food is potentially the best lineup for hormone interaction, right? Sometimes when we have food first or coffee first, or I guess flipping any of those in between, it impacts our bodies differently. So if that helps to inspire you to stick with water first, that could be helpful as well. But equally is small steps towards where you're trying to go, right? So what piece could you work on this coming week that's going to help you get closer to that maybe fuller grasp of your food plan?
For me, it would be maybe planning some easy breakfast to start with, especially during the week, the work days that I go, or maybe just like do the smoothie the night before and keeping it in the fridge so it's ready in the morning, rather than being lazy and being like, I have to create a smoothie right now and I don't feel like it, so I just throw anything in it. So maybe just having that with a bit of protein powder that I have. And I also need to make sure that when I'm cooking my meals, actually my lunch and dinner, is that to include protein within that, because sometimes it's the ones that I have are the dried beans, so it takes such a long time for me to cook it. Either if I have some on stock, that's really helpful for me, but sometimes I'm like, there is not enough time to cook it, so I'm just gonna have minus that. Unless I'm gonna
Right.
end up adding some maybe tofu or tempeh or something.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I love that plan. And maybe what you could do is somehow set a reminder for yourself. So say maybe it's like 7 p.m. each night, you know, a reminder thing goes off on your phone or your calendar or something like that that says, you know, something along the lines of think about food for tomorrow, because that can allow you time to prep your smoothie. It could allow you time to prep beans if that's something that you're planning to having the next day, so that you don't have to do it, you know, right before you're trying to eat. Or even just to think like, oh, I'll have this, I'll have this, I'll have this, and I'll pack these snacks or something like that, so that you know, generally speaking, what you might be looking at for the next day. Do you think something like that could be possible and or helpful?
I think definitely planning for the day after, like even if I'm
Mm.
passing by a grocery store before getting home, getting the stuff that I need, I think will be really helpful.
Cool.
Because all I need is for me, because my meals generally don't take me much time. If
Mm.
I'm gonna say max, maybe like 20 minutes,
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
having all my veggies there, cutting them up, and because I know what my sauce is, a bit of olive oil, add this, add that, and that's it. So,
Yeah.
and
I
then
love
I
that.
would end up doing like usually a portion of 2 to 3 times. So I will have it for the next 2 to 3 days and saves me
Oh,
a lot
great.
of time of cooking.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome strategy to set yourself a reminder for before you're on the way home. I love that.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Anything else that came up for you in this section, or that you would like support strategizing around?
And regarding the treats, I'm also having this thing where I know I want to have what I'm craving exactly, but I usually have these rules around the treat that it has to be mainly unprocessed, it has to be from certain places rather than I just crave that I'm gonna have that.
Mm. And is that helpful for you?
This part, not yes and no. It is sometimes when I feel like I don't want to have too much junk food. But sometimes it's like I don't even eat that much junk food, and it's like, why am I questioning my treat? Like, for me,
Good point.
instead of getting a chocolate cake that was good, I got a dry gluten-free chocolate cake that didn't taste that great, but I went with that instead.
Yeah, yeah. And that might just be like an in the moment question for yourself. You know, if you do want a chocolate cake, you can stop and think like, have I not had a treat in a while? Is it okay to get more of a, you know, real option, for lack of better words? And then maybe that's what you opt for. And certainly if any ingredients literally bother you, that's a different conversation. But yeah, you know, it is, you make a good point, because some of the like gluten-free type treats, or those kinds of things end up not necessarily satisfying what you wanted in the first place, right? Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Are you open to shifting those choices at all?
I definitely want to change these because it's kind of bothering me slightly because I do realize that my treat can be like a tiny piece of dark chocolate, and this is what I consider a treat, which looking
Absolutely.
at it now, it's like it's really nothing. It's just like a tiny piece of chocolate,
Mhm.
which most likely, if I do have that, I'm probably going to crave more chocolate after.
Maybe, maybe not.
So,
Yeah.
or I was thinking of maybe doing some maybe energy bites or my own dessert from time to time. I used to do it before, but ever since graduating from my health coaching, I've been really busy with everything that I'm not really giving myself the time to actually just bake something that I would like to have or want to try. I used to do that like I remember on Saturdays where I used to be really spontaneous and just Google a recipe and be like, let me try this. But
Mhm.
now it's just like, I'm not doing that anymore. It's like whatever I
Yeah.
have, okay, a rice cake, maybe with some chocolate, done.
Are
And it's
you,
already packaged.
yeah, right? Are you open to planning a day like that for yourself? Like putting something like that on the calendar? Like, I'm gonna spend, you know, 3 hours on Saturday to make something fun that I'm really into. And I imagine that you might find sometimes it works contrary to what we think, right? Sometimes when we have a piece of chocolate, it makes us want more. And then sometimes when we have something that's really satisfying, we feel satisfied, right? And this could be to the conversation of what you're talking about earlier about ingredients and stuff like that. But if you find joy in taking time to make something, that could be a thing worth putting on your schedule. And especially if that's something that you could then have for a couple days of a treat or something like that, then that could be super helpful.
I think
like
I
that.
want to bring that back to my schedule on Saturdays because it used to be my rest day. But then I made it this whole day where I would get things done because I'm working 3 times a week. So I'm figuring I'm pushing all of that on Saturday instead of me having that day for myself and just having fun. Kind of became that let's do this and cram the whole schedule, which is another issue.
Yeah. I hear you. I totally vote for giving yourself a day every once in a while to have some fun, even if it's not every single week. Yeah, I like that. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. If anybody else has any questions or comments or anything else that they'd like to share or strategize around, certainly we can chat about that. Hold on, don't put it down. Yes. Water, juice, food. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, water first is your option. I'll send you that list of plant-based protein sources, and Sarah, I'll share with you that caffeine email just for like information. Grant, if you need anything, you let me know. But otherwise, it has been a pleasure chatting with all of you today. And keep these steps and strategies in mind. I'll post the recording of the video as well. So if you need to revisit the steps at all for really anything in your life that you would like to make adjustments around, please consider it. All right. Have a lovely rest of your day, everybody. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you for sharing. See you guys later.